And then Hanna Hopko, thank you for reading the memo on the dress code today. Chairwoman of Foreign Affairs Committee in the Ukrainian Parliament, 2014 to 2019, and also founder and chair of the board of National Interest Advocacy Networks.
So thanks. First of all, let me express our gratitude on behalf of Ukrainian civil society organization, on behalf of Ukrainian people, to Sweden for being with us. And Sweden stands with Ukraine, and Sweden will win with Ukraine. So I think it's really important. And let me start from presentation of ANTS, National Interest Advocacy Network. In 2019, when I finished my 5-year service in Ukrainian Parliament as the head of the Foreign Affairs Committee, together with my colleagues, we were thinking about establishment of a think tank, advocacy, NGO, and network, like a combination of everything, and what would be the name. So, and we discussed that all Ukrainian volunteers, medical people, we are like ANT. Everyone is trying to help each other, to help our state counter Russian aggression. So, ANTS, and after the full-scale escalation, Ukrainians proved that everyone in our country was contributing to help our state, not just to survive, but actually to stop, and I hope in the future to win. So here you can see that we are working on different fronts, and of course, besides providing support to Ukrainians in different regions, especially in the newly deoccupied in Kherson. This Monday I spent in Kherson city, and really I'm very sad what happened just these days and how many killed people. And Russia massively continue every day attacking, especially Kherson and southern of Ukraine. And we delivered support from Taiwan, laptops, and also portable generators. So, and we are not just helping. Now, local communities helping with humanitarian aids. Civil society also always producing vision for the future of our country. And after the visit to Japan this year in January, we have the vision of Victory Train. And this train, like we took a train from Tokyo to Hiroshima, it's just 4 hours, 830 kilometers. And also, I do believe that one day, and I'll kindly invite people sitting here, we will take a train from Kyiv to Simferopol. It's also 800, almost 30 kilometers. And I can imagine it will take us only 4 hours, not 16, like it used to be before Russia occupied Crimea. So I think it's really important to have this vision of reconstruction, and this vision is not just to rebuild, building back better, but we definitely see innovations, IT, and like our previous speaker, Ukraine is one of the best countries in the digital sphere. And also we have civil society have our agenda, ensure Ukraine's accession to the EU and NATO, bring the aggressor to justice, de-imperialization of Russian Federation, reparations, and rebuild, modernize Ukraine, and educate and actually prepare the new elites in our country. And what we do, actually, we are advocating and mobilizing the world and international arena together with our partners from an Anti-Corruption Action Center and international network Opora. We established the International Center for Ukrainian Victory a year ago after the full-scale escalation. And of course, now if you ask what civil society organizations are doing in Ukraine, they are advocating for weapons. So HIMARS, as a part of our job together with Ukrainian state. Also here in Sweden, we are thankful for CV90s and many others, very helpful military supply to help us to win. And also we advocated for candidate status, knowing that this is a powerful leverage for us to keep our government delivering in reforming our state. And also We have many projects. One of them is now we are conducting the youth model of NATO Parliamentary Assembly, because we truly believe that next generations of Ukrainians, when Ukraine joins EU and NATO, will also contribute by their professionalism. So also our team are in the armed forces. So this is the role of civil society now, and together with ICUV, we are helping local communities, because Sweden invested a lot in decentralization reform as one of the anti-corruption reform, and local communities contributed a lot to territorial defense. And when you ask what is the key pillars of the resilience of Ukraine, it's a combination of strengths of local communities, territorial defense, civil society organization. And what we are doing now, we are helping local communities to build direct communications with partners in European countries. We already organized 5 visits to 5 European countries, representatives of local communities, women which were from the Hromadas, which were under occupations. And it's really important that they are developing their roadmaps, investment plan, and actually using digital instrument for future recovery and reconstruction. So I'll stop here because just to show how multifunctioning civil society in this existential period, but besides vision, practical volunteer works inside country, outside, mobilizing support. And in the future, my second contributions, I will introduce the Sustainable Peace Manifesto, Never Again. How to reach sustainable peace. Because after 8 years of peaceful settlement, when, remember, Ukraine was telling, please don't ask lethal weapon. Only peaceful solutions through peaceful settlement, political, diplomatic ways, we will help you to solve Russian aggression. We ended up with genocide. Let's be frank, Russia is committing a genocide against us. And I think now we have to avoid a trap of peace talks or negotiations, because there are many in different capitals. What we are learning, that there are some temptations after counter-offensive. So where is the victory strategy for Ukraine? At what is at stake? And here I can ask you a very honest question. What is Western endgame if Ukraine runs out of soldiers?
Coming back to you, Hanna, you have really moved from being in the parliament and active there, and now more of a civil activist. And this network, the ANTS, that you have created, is very much now focused on the war and mobilizing in this common narrative. But you also mentioned that there, hopefully soon, there will be a day after the war. So what would be the purpose then? How do you sort of build a new narrative in peacetime? How can you use your network to move on after that? You mentioned that you had a peace manifesto. Mm-hmm. There is a tomorrow as well.
Yeah, so actually, but first, I also wanted to ask people sitting in this audience, please raise the hands who really sure that the West has a victory strategy for Ukraine. So it's really important, because goals defines the means. Mm-hmm. So coming back from Kherson this Monday, and actually one night wasting in shelter because of massive bombarding during this week. So actually, and meeting ordinary people in south of Ukraine, so they were asking, Hanna, Russians are attacking us constantly. Why Ukrainian armed forces are not responding? And it was hard to answer that, unfortunately, there is a hunger of ammunition, and this is why we also have to prepare for counteroffensive. Why I'm asking this question? Because the question which I was asked in February 24, when Daria took my daughter and they were leaving Ukraine, when we were staying with my husband in Kiev, actually. And my daughter asked me a question, because in our kitchen, in our flat in Kiev, on the wall, there is pictures. during my service in the Foreign Affairs Committee, pictures with Vice President Biden, Chancellor Merkel, almost all leaders. And my daughter asked me a question, Mom, after 8 years of not being at home, I missed you a lot. So now, why we have to leave Ukraine after 8 years? You were working so hard, and we truly believed that we will succeed. And instead, you are in assassination list together with Daria and many other civil society activists. And some people from US were calling for us many times and saying, Hannah, you should leave Ukraine, because when Kyiv will be occupied, you will be tortured and killed. But we stayed at that time in Kyiv. So I didn't have answer to my daughter. Why, after 8 years of peaceful settlement, after 8 years of sanctions, Nord Stream 2 and many others, we Ukrainians had to leave. We were forced to leave Ukraine. So this is why now, after 1 year and 3 months of Russia committing genocide, and I will insist on this word, because it's so piteous that only after 90 years of Stalin committing genocide against Ukraine, man-made genocide during Soviet Union, European Parliament finally recognized Holodomor as a genocide. So I think it's really important now to understand that without victory strategy, it took us months to convince Western partners to form tank coalition. Now it takes us also months to convince our partners that without air superiority, without fighter jets, we cannot conduct successful counteroffensive. But thinking about counteroffensive, it's a tactical approach. This is why traveling to 16 countries for last year, 16 countries, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, not just European or US and Canada. So trying to mobilize global South countries as well. So this is why we in Ukraine, we developed this Sustainable Peace Manifesto. You could read this, which includes 2 main parts: responsibility for the war and ensuring sustainable peace. Of course, I prefer now to think about, I'm sitting in Crimea and preparing tea with Crimea flowers and others, but I see now many attempts which makes me worry. And I really thankful to US Congress, bipartisan initiative, on April 26th, they registered a victory resolution on Ukraine. In this resolution, they have very clear position that US policy, the policy of US to see how Ukraine restore its internationally recognized borders 1991. There is also mentioning about Russia pays reparations for Ukraine, justice. There is a justice for victims, and also Ukraine joining NATO. So I really want to see consolidated position, transatlantic unity, what victory means. Because for 95% of Ukrainians, we have understanding and vision of what victory means for us. And when I hear some, maybe you should forget about Crimea, we do not differentiate one part of Ukraine to other, because it's about people suffering every hour from torture, atrocities in occupied areas. So this is why liberation of all Ukrainian territories is a key for us, and we cannot here to trade and others. Yeah. So 40 experts in Ukraine developed this Sustainable Peace Manifesto, Never Again, how to reach sustainable peace. Because we fed up of ceasefire. For 8 years of Normandy formats, Minsk agreement, we never seen a long-lasting ceasefire. So now also, so I will not mention, but there is also here, besides Ukraine's membership in the EU and NATO, there is also decolonization of Russia and overcoming Russian totalitarianism. So you will read this paper, and I do believe that such strategies will finally be at National Security Council of White House, at the European Commission, at UK, Canada, and we will see a victory strategy. And then we will not ask for weapons when some weapons are too late. No-fly zone we were praying was too late for Bucha and Mariupol. So now with Russia nuclear terror, what they are doing with the biggest nuclear power plant, and also let's think about next winter season, because Russia destroyed or damaged more than 40% of our electricity and energy infrastructure, and we will not be able to get everything big transformators until, because it's not easy to produce them. We are not talking about generators. So this is why next winter will be even harder. And if you ask me about sanctions, sanctions are good. Great that we have 10 packages in the EU. But does this 10 package stopped aggressive behavior of Russia? Does it make us closer to Russian economic collapse? So still, there are many ways how to strengthen and confiscation of assets. So this is why I think I have one dream, and I do believe it will happen. One day, in Moscow, in the Red Square, there should be 2 memorials. One for genocide committed by Stalin, second for genocide committed against Ukrainians during current Russian regime. So this is the way when Russian society, besides paying reparations, like Nazi Germany after defeat in the World War II, the same, because everyone is talking about the Russian regime, but Russian society also, their identity is pure imperialistic. We in Ukraine, we kick out Yanukovych. We didn't allow Yanukovych to turn Ukraine into the dictatorship. So we have to work with Russian society, because Russian society now keeping silence. They are not protesting against genocide, what is happening in Ukraine. Thanks for this communication, you mentioned this, because when we intercepted phone conversations with Russian women talking to their men, it's horrible. Actually, it's not about humanity. You heard some of the conversations when Russian soldiers are telling the stories how they are raping Ukrainian women, how they are killing kids. And it's normal for them. So this is why I think besides regime change, it's also important to think about Russian society and de-imperialization of Russian society. And this is why without recognition of independence of Ukraine and actually putting placing the memorials instead of Lenin and Stalin in the Red Square, there should be memorials for all the victims during the Soviet times, during the genocide, Holodomor, and now as well.
Thank you so much. A very powerful testimony.